Hey BookTube, time for a weekly wrap-up.
I got my ticket for the long way round.
I'm Jen and I listen to audiobooks, and I did not get to do a Friday Reads this past week. So in order to not make this coming Friday Reads like half an hour long, even after I edit it, I thought I would go ahead and tell you about the books I read last week. So I am going to start out with Then Came You, which is Animal Magnetism Book 5 by Jill Shalvis. This was narrated by Karen White. And Karen White has done all of the books in this Animal Magnetism series by Jill Shalvis. So this particular one was about Wyatt the vet and Emily the vet intern, who is from LA and thinks that she wants the big LA life and finds out, she's not sure she does after all. So it was a sweet little romance and I gave it 3 stars. Next up was Changeless by Gail Carriger. This is book 2 in the Parasol Protectorate series, and it is narrated on audio by Emily Gray. Emily Gray was fantastic. I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with her. Her ability to translate the language of the 1870s, England in the 1870s, is phenomenal. I was so pleased with it, and I really made the book, made the book even better. This is a fantasy of manners. It is set in a paranormal London in 1870, and Alexia Terabody is the main character. She is married to a guy, Lord Macon, and he is a werewolf, which I find really funny because he's very alpha male. That's a romance term. In romance books, you have the alpha males, and they are the ones that are going to take care of everything, and they tend to be a little bit overbearing and certainly overprotective. But I just find it hilarious that in this particular book, her husband, who is a werewolf, is the alpha male. I think that's so funny. This is decidedly an adult book with a few adult themes without getting overly graphic. It is wonderful to see a woman as a main character really being in charge. Everybody looks to her for leadership, and she is not taking any prisoners. I'll tell you what, she's gonna get it done, and she steps up and takes control. I think that the funniest line in this book was from Ivy, who is Alexia's good friend, who is kind of a ditz. And they're talking about methods of travel and going by train or carriage rather than by dirigible, which is like a blimp. And Ivy is talking about how really upscale social people just don't travel by dirigible because it lacks gravitas. I thought I was going to die laughing at that. There were so many laugh out loud moments in this book. So if you haven't gotten around to the Parasol Protectorate series and you like that kind of thing and you love to laugh, well, then pick it up. Pick up this one because it's really, really good. That one I gave 4 stars. Tales of the Madman Underground by John Barnes. I read this book, well actually I didn't read this one, but I read a paperback copy of this book that belongs to my daughter because she told me to read it and I put it on the shelf, forgot about it, and then I thought, I know I'm going to see her this weekend. So last weekend was when I saw her and I wanted to read the book before then. So I did, and this is the story of Carl Shoemaker. He is a senior in high school in 1973 in a very small town in Ohio. And so it's really not got a plot. It's more of a character study, but it's a very engaging one. I need a plot, most of the time, but this was really, really good. It's the first 5 days of his senior year, and it's told in the first person. And the Madman Underground refers to a misfit group of his friends who all get pulled out of class I don't know if it's every day or once a week, to go to this therapy group where they all talk about their feelings, and they all have some reason that they have been referred to this group by a teacher. It was just really interesting. This is a great book, and I'm really kind of surprised. So I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. The Storm in the Barn, this is by Matt Phelan, and it is a graphic novel. I saw this in Ollie's, and I had to pick it up because I love the illustrations. It's beautiful. It is the story of 11-year-old Jack, who is in the Dust Bowl. He lives in the Dust Bowl with his family, which is basically Kansas, in 1937. And Jack is a kid who is bullied, and his dad really doesn't have much time for him, and he gets relegated to taking care of his younger sisters, which, you know, today we kind of look down on that, but for 1937, that was pretty common stuff. So there is some mysterious being in the barn, and he's scared of it, but then finally he confronts his fear, and there's a little bit of magical realism going on. There's a very happy ending, and it's so pretty. It's such a pretty book. So I really liked it, and I gave it 4 stars. The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. This is by Leslye Walton, and it was narrated on audio by Cassandra Campbell. Cassandra Campbell is wonderful in this book. She is, like, approaches phenomenal. She's so good. She has to do a lot of accents, and namely a French accent, and she does it just amazingly. It's effortless. You don't even notice that she's an American trying to do an accent. It's seamless. So I loved that about the narration. This is an interesting story. It is magical realism, and it has a melancholy tone to it. It is told in kind of autobiographical form by Ava Lavender, and it is the history of her family and kind of the interesting mysteries of her family. It goes back about 2 generations to her grandmother. I think her grandmother, and then her mother, and then her. And she's a teenager in the 1950s. But she gives you a lot of her history, her family history, which is fascinating because of the magical realism that is wrapped into the story. It doesn't really have much of a plot, other than it's the story of what has happened in her family up to the point where she was born and in her life. Something really big happens in her life, and that's basically the culmination of the book. And then the end of the book is wonderful. It's amazing in terms of the ending and what happens. So I highly recommend it, and I gave that one 4 stars. And lastly, November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I love this author, and although I have a print copy of the book, I had pre-ordered it on Audible. It is narrated on audio by Zachary Weber and Angela Goethals, who, if you're going to have a dual POV in a romance book, those are the 2 narrators that you should get. And in fact, when I met Colleen Hoover to get this book, she mentioned that she wished she could have them all the time, but they're so busy that she can't. So this is the story of Phelan and Ben, and they happen to meet at a restaurant on the day that Phelan is going to move from Los Angeles to New York. She's only 18, but she's having dinner with her father, and Ben kind of saves her from a situation with her dad. So then they get to know each other, they spend the day together, and then they resolve that they're going to meet on November 9 every year for 5 years until they're 23, because Phelan's mom said to her at one point that you really don't know anything until you're 23. You shouldn't make any big life decisions until you're 23, because then you have a little bit of maturity and you're able to make a wise decision. So she takes that to heart. The book isn't about the years in between. There are a few sentences about each year right before they meet, but it's the story of the days that they meet. And so each November 9 is essentially what you get from the story. And it's classic Colleen Hoover. I did not love her last book, confess. It wasn't what I've come to expect from her, but this makes me want to reread a couple of her books, which I may do in December. I don't know, I may call that a rereading month, but clearly I loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. This week I'm knocking a few things off of my TBR, which I will tell you about on Friday, but If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts. So let's talk about that in comments. And that is it for now from me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
When I'm gone, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me by my walk. You're gonna miss me by my talk. Oh, you're gonna miss me when I'm